Naoto is a shy introverted student who gets bullied by his school crush harder than Bakugo bullies Midoriya. However, the more she torments him, the more he starts wagging his tail until he realizes he might just be in love with her. It all starts at the end of the school day when Naoto, instead of heading home like a normal student, wanders into the library to find some goon material. Inside, he finds a group of ladies gossiping about other girls in their class and zooms past them because he knows he's going to die a virgin with this haircut. He explains how he comes here every day to get his work done, but with those girls yapping in the background, he might not be able to finish his homework today. The more they run their mouths, the more Naoto gets frustrated. But once the girls catch him staring at them, the guy goes back to being socially awkward, much like you idiots. Just then, one of the girls starts looking for a book on the shelves right behind him, and Naoto accidentally drops his bag in panic. The girl picks his bag up but notices some rough sketches inside, so she invites the other girls to have a look at the drawings. One of the girls spits facts by saying these manga panels are better than One Piece and makes fun of it before leaving. However, one of the girls, Nagatoro, stays behind and commends Naoto for his work. She then goes full crazy and reads the whole thing with so much enthusiasm Naoto starts to think he might have unlocked the Gok Gok DLC. She then asks if he projected himself as the main character in the manga, but Naoto keeps denying it. She continues to believe in her own theory and mentions how she feels sorry for him because not only does he look like a virgin in real life, but also because even his stories are about getting no shotties on his D. Naoto fails to understand the issue in his story, so Nagatoro shows him by playing it out. When she plays her part of the scene, Naoto is expected to do his part where he pulls the girl's ear. However, the guy has never touched a woman in his life, much like you guys, and starts shaking in his boots. Nagatoro notices this and freakishly pins him against the wall, demonstrating that he doesn't have the guts to do what he's trying to show in the manga. Naoto gets so nervous that he can't even look in her general direction. She immediately picks on his weakness and starts teasing him even more, so much so that the guy starts to tear up. She then wipes his tears with her handkerchief, and after Naoto bites the dust, Nagatoro leaves him after apologizing. As she happily walks off, Naoto realizes he got ratioed by a first-year girl, which makes him question his whole existence. At night, Naoto cowers in his bed and can hear Nagatoro's evil laugh echoing in his head, which is why he stays up all night. The next day, he is about to enter the art room, but Nagatoro finds him again and starts teasing him. However, Nagatoro calmly returns her handkerchief and tells her that he washed it after using it for his gooning session. She tells him it was his to keep, but Naoto doesn't say anything and walks into the art room. He goes inside and takes a deep breath, but Nagatoro comes in after him and starts surveying the room, which makes him nervous. She then realizes they're all alone in the room, which means she can torment him as much as she likes. Naoto begins drawing to avoid her, but she sits right in front of him and tells him to use her as a model. Naoto starts making excuses to avoid her, so she decides to put her melons on display to keep him focused. Naoto is so shocked he falls off his chair and begs her to put them back in. He then agrees to draw her, but after several minutes of staring, he hasn't drawn a single line. He realizes it's harder for him to draw a girl because he's never really looked at one before, so Nagatoro motivates him by offering a reward. Eventually, the guy begins moving his pencil and ends up drawing a really good sketch of her. Nagatoro is impressed and wants to give him a reward, so she asks him to close his eyes. Despite hesitating at first, Naoto closes his eyes, prompting Nagatoro to grab his chin and bring her face close to him. He starts thinking she's about to kiss him and pouts, only for Nagatoro to flick his nose and make fun of his hideous face.
Emotional, damn it!
She then explains that there is no way he's getting a kiss for this sketch and points at her thighs, which is one of the areas Naoto purposely didn't draw. She thinks he's too shy to draw a woman's twin towers and starts mocking him even further until the guy is at the verge of crying. Naoto covers his face with his arms, but she grabs both his hands and splits them apart with ease. After making fun of him for being weak, she wipes his tears with her handkerchief and sadistically apologizes for teasing him. She then asks him to draw her better next time for a reward, but Naoto might just quit drawing entirely after this much bullying. As he walks home, Nagatoro keeps following him because their routes match, which annoys the guy even further. She keeps calling him senpai and gets in his way, prompting him to ask what she wants. Nagatoro finally breaks character and starts blushing right before asking him out on a date. Naoto gets nervous and says it's too soon, only for her to hit him with a psych. She then reminds him that he looks like a failed science experiment and that no girl would actually want to date him, and Naoto says he was just playing along. As he keeps walking, Nagatoro gently pushes him from the back.
Whoops.
He then casually gets out and keeps walking without saying much, which shocks her. This reminds him of his early childhood when he was bullied by his classmates and never had the strength to resist. Just then, Nagatoro appears in front of him and asks if he secretly goons to her feet pics at night. Naoto finally loses his cool and tells her that she pisses him off, but despite her annoying presence, he still cannot come to hate her. The guy then gets nervous and says he should get going, but before he can leave, Nagatoro decides to tell him her name. She even writes it on his chest with her finger, which makes the guy cream. The next day, Naoto is peacefully drawing stuff in the art room when Nagatoro comes running in with a hula hoop and shows him the jiggle physics of her buns. She then asks the guy to slide in, but Naoto stops in panic when he sees her rear moving harder than Sakura's. Even Nagatoro gets embarrassed and starts beating her with the hoop for it. A few days later, Naoto is in the art room alone and pulls out Mommy Milker's Midnight Massacre Volume 3 from his bag. He plans on making its pages sticky, but his gooning session is interrupted by the sudden arrival of Nagatoro. Saito quickly hides the magazine behind his back and greets him normally, even offering his lunch to throw her off. However, Nagatoro can tell something is wrong because he is acting weird, and he's also got that Excalibur unsheathed. Naoto tries to distract her and tuck the magazine away at the same time, but Nagatoro instinctively grabs his hand and blows his cover. She demands he let her see the book, but Nagatoro refuses to let it go. Eventually, she gently grabs his hand and puts on an innocent face, which throws him off guard and allows her to snatch the magazine. After giving him a tease, she goes through the pages and realizes what's up, which amuses her even further. Naoto panics her, tells her that he only reads these magazines for the plot, but Nagatoro knows what kind of plot he's talking about.
Yeah, boy.
She then honka-honkas her own milk jugs to tease Naoto, but the guy insists he bought this magazine because it has vampires in it. Hearing this, Nagatoro goes through the entire book and realizes that it is more interesting than the entirety of One Piece. However, there is one character that resembles Naoto because he is a wuss who runs around with garlic in his hand thinking it'll scare off the vampires. The only difference is that he gets sucked dry, which is something Naoto will never get to experience. Nagatoro then says he will be fine if the vampire attacks him because he's a virgin loser, but Naoto tries to act like he's touched a woman before. Just then, the light goes out and Nagatoro says he wants to try and bite him like a vampire. She even shows him her canines, which are sharper than an average human, and slowly starts creeping up on him. Eventually, she pins him down, and Naoto gets nervous thinking someone will see them and assume they're doing the nasty. However, Nagatoro does not care and opens up his buttons, ready to take a bite out of him. As she gets closer to his face, she realizes his breath is straight up sewer fumes and backs off. Naoto tries to get away, but she quickly pounces on him, only to get a hands-on his Excalibur. However, the girl is so unhinged that she starts making fun of this situation as well. Later, the two walk home together and Nagatoro asks if this is the first time his crown jewels got a royal inspection. Naoto gets flustered and avoids the question, but Nagatoro makes things even more awkward by asking if it got bricked up. Immediately after, Nagatoro runs off to her house, leaving the guy regretting all his life choices. At night, Naoto is reading his magazine but starts twitching because he can't get Nagatoro off his mind. The next day, Nagatoro meets him again and proposes a game in which they have to guess the location of each other's chest sensors from over the clothes. However, Naoto is worried the FBI might knock down his door and refuses to play. Nagatoro then lures him in with a do-whatever-you-say ticket, explaining how he can use it to make her do anything, even bouncing on his pogo stick. Thinking he can use it to stop the bullying, Naoto agrees to play the game. Going first, Nagatoro correctly guesses the right location and takes her sweet time teasing the guy. Next up is Naoto's turn, and despite her thinking he doesn't have the balls to touch her, Naoto keeps moving in with his fingers out. In the end, Nagatoro gets extremely nervous and runs off when her phone rings, making the whole encounter pointless. Later that day, Naoto enjoys some alone time in a restaurant, but it does not last long because Nagatoro walks in with a friend named Sakura and two other guys. As they get seated, Naoto hides himself and starts watching their every move. When Sakura and one guy leave to place the order, the other guy starts hitting on her and Naoto thinks she might start bullying him. However, she stops his advances in a calm manner, making Naoto realize there's more to her than just goofing and teasing. Soon after, the other guy approaches her as well and tries to out-rease his friend. This time, Naoto is sure she will show her true colors and bully the guy until he cries. However, Nagatoro sternly rejects the guy and sends him off. When her friend returns from the bathroom, Nagatoro explains that boring guys are a turn-off and scolds her for setting her up for this awful double date. Later, Naoto walks home alone and wonders if he is the only one Nagatoro toys with. Just then, Nagatoro shows up and starts walking with him, explaining how he could tell it's him from a mile away because of his beta posture. Naoto wonders if he should ask her why she only teases him, but backs out because Nagatoro keeps annoying him every chance she gets. The next day, Naoto is peacefully drawing in the art room, but Nagatoro shows up out of nowhere and starts modeling for him. He says he prefers drawing non-living things, but Nagatoro drops her skirt and unbuttons her shirt to catch her attention. She then reveals she is wearing a swimsuit underneath and teases Naoto because he looked like he was eager to see her melons. Later, it starts to rain heavily, so both of them rush back home. But when Naoto starts showing signs of inferior genes, Nagatoro suggests they wait under the shade until he regains his strength. As they dry themselves up, Nagatoro makes him nervous by saying that her dress has become see-through. She claims the guy is dying to peek at her chug jugs, but Naoto makes it very clear that he wants to die a virgin like you guys. He then recalls how she was wearing a swimsuit earlier and expects she might be pulling the same prank again. When he turns around to call her out, he realizes that she is in fact not wearing a swimsuit, which makes both of them blush. He apologizes for laying eyes on her uncharted territory, but Nagatoro starts teasing him by calling him a closet creep. Amid the pestering, Nagatoro starts to sneeze, which makes them realize they will get sick if they stay out here. Naoto decides to sprint to his house, but since the place is quite far, Nagatoro invites him over until the rain settles down. Naoto accepts the invite but fears her parents will be 10 times more annoying than her, even imagining a scenario where they bully him to death. He then asks about her parents, and Nagatoro reveals they will be out late today, which means they are alone. She offers her elder brother clothes and a towel so he can dry himself off, and even tells him to use the dryer for his wet clothes. Naoto starts to get bricked thinking this is the same towel Nagatoro uses to dry herself, but she comes back to tell him that the one he has is a spare. Later she makes him coffee, but Naoto is way too nervous to take a sip. Realizing he hasn't touched a woman his entire life, she asks him what a boy and a girl do behind closed doors to mess with him. Naoto demonstrates that he is in fact a true virgin by avoiding the question, so Nagatoro takes the lead and asks if he wants to smash. Naoto nervously turns her down, but she explains she is asking if he'd like to play Super Smash Bros. Later, they too play some games on Nagatoro's 5 pounds, even though in reality, it doesn't have any games to begin with. Unlike in real life, Naoto is actually good at games and wipes the floor with her, and he doesn't even feel bad because she's been up his back door all this time. As they keep playing, Naoto keeps winning matches until Nagatoro whispers something naughty into his ear, causing him to drop the controller and ultimately lose the match. After humiliating him for losing, she goes back to playing with him, and the two have a good time together. Once the rain settles down, Naoto takes his leave, but not before thanking her for having him over. The next day, Naoto arrives at the cafe but realizes there is nowhere to sit. Just then, Nagatoro invites him over to her table, and knowing they'd bully him to depression, he decides to finish his meal as soon as possible and skedaddle. As soon as he sits down, Gamo and Yoshi assume they're dating, and she actually starts cuddling up to him to strengthen their belief. Joining in on the fun, Nagatoro's friends ask him to have a 4-way with them and state how he's more like a failed social experiment than a boyfriend. Nagatoro starts to play with his hair, saying he's a fluffy pet, but starts to act super possessive when her friends try to do the same. She then says Naoto is her slave and starts petting him. And once again, Yoshi tries to do the same only to get stopped midway. She even starts arguing with them when they make fun of Naoto, making him realize she's taking a stand for him because he's too big of a wimp to do that for himself. Summing up all of his courage, he stands up and shouts that he is not her boyfriend before sitting back down and eating his lunch. The girls were expecting him to give a full lecture on bullying but bursts into laughter, because that is all he had to say. Later, Nagatoro gets upset with him because he never fights back and teaches him to clap back at anyone who disrespects him. Naoto isn't so sure about hitting other people, but Nagatoro insists that's the right way of dealing with bullies. She then starts roasting the guy, expecting he'd slap her, but Naoto freezes in one place and almost starts crying because the jokes hurt his fragile heart. Nagatoro apologizes at first, but then continues to insults in hopes that he finally some have the balls to slap her. Eventually, Naoto gets fed up and swings his hands, only to activate her wobble physics with a palm strike. Despite being embarrassed, Nagatoro gathers herself and commends Naoto for standing up for himself. Right after, she starts teasing him by implying that he purposely hit her milk packs, which he obviously denies. The next day, Naoto is washing off goon at the sink when Nagatoro shows up and shows him that she has orange jizz all over her hands. She asks him to scoot aside so she can use the sink too, and Naoto gets bricked just looking at her soapy hands. Seeing him acting like a wuss, she starts rubbing his hands and asks if he'd like to hit it from the back later. She then gives him a Nagatoro hands-on special, but the guy finishes so quickly that he forgets to clean and runs off. The next day, Naoto is peacefully having lunch in the club room when Nagatoro's friends show up to torment him. They ask if this is the secret place where he unclogs Nagatoro's pipes, but Naoto says it's literally just his club room. They sit next to him and watch him eat, which makes it hard for him to swallow. They also interrogate him on his experience with the mommy milkers and then start laughing at his reaction. Knowing he hasn't touched a woman in his life, much like you guys, the girls offer their own stress balls as a test, but the guy creams and makes a run for it. However, the girls drag him back and force him to touch her buns. In reality, she was hiding actual buns in her shirt, which means Naoto is still a virgin loser. As they continue the torment, Nagatoro finally arrives in class and suddenly the boss music starts playing. The girls immediately skedaddle out of there, and Naoto thanks her for the help. However, Nagatoro sternly congratulates him for touching melons, which makes the guy extremely nervous. He explains that her friend actually had bean buns in her shirt, which makes Nagatoro laugh. Naoto says he never consented to it, so she asks if he would like to test her stress balls for real. Naoto continues to act uninterested until she pulls out a premium bean bun from her bag and starts comparing its softness to a regular bun. She then tucks both buns into her shirt and asks him to guess which one is the premium one by squeezing. If he manages to guess correctly, he can get his hands on the softest buns on planet Earth. Thinking it's just bread, Naoto starts to squeeze them with his eyes closed, not realizing that one of the buns has dropped from her shirt. When he starts squeezing her actually melon, Nagatoro starts to lose her mind, but let's finish. After a thorough inspection, he points at her real melon and says this one is the premium bun because it's softer than the other. However, when quickly realizes what is up, he apologizes, but it's already too late for that. After smacking him for a solid 10 minutes, Nagatoro keeps the premium bun for herself and lets him have the regular one. The next day, he waits for Nagatoro to show up because she had asked him to draw her the day prior. Naoto said he planned to draw apples tomorrow, but she urged him to stop being a wuss and expand his domain. Just then, Nagatoro pushes a large sofa into the club room and reveals she borrowed it from the crafts club because they don't need it anymore. After feeling the couch, Nagatoro goes to the window and watches the boys play basketball. She can't believe those guys are the same age as Naoto because he can't walk up the stairs without cracking his knees. Naoto says it must be nice for those guys to have so many shotties on their joysticks, but realizes he has zero res, no aura, so he can't blame the girls for not considering him. Nagatoro notices his concerns and tells him that to receive praise from others, he must give compliments first. She tells him to start off by giving her compliments, and Naoto starts to look at her face. He realizes she's kinda cute but can't say it to her face because he knows she will tease him. He also notices that she has nice legs, but if he were to say anything about them, he'd have the FBI knocking on his door. Even her hair smells nice, but he will come off as a creep if he mentions anything about it. In the end, he tells her that her hair is smooth and Nagatoro is amused by the comment. She asks him to give her more compliments, and the guy says she is nimble and cool, which makes her blush. She then decides to return the favor but has to really look at him before she can find anything worth praising. She says his face makes her laugh, and he makes all kinds of weird expressions that amuse her. If she looks at him long enough, the guy starts twitching and even cries when teased to a certain point. Getting nervous, Naoto asks her to stop tormenting him and just model like she came here to. Nagatoro starts hitting some sussy poses on the sofa, but he asks her to sit still and sharpens his pencil. As he observes her body, he realizes she's kinda busty and starts getting nervous, which amuses her even more. After minutes of sitting around, Naoto can't draw a single line, so Nagatoro gets tired and gets comfy on the sofa. She promises to give him a better reward this time, but she knows he doesn't have the guts to go through with anything. While they are talking, Nagatoro falls asleep and Naoto finally begins drawing her. After a while, he finishes up her sketch and realizes she's a cutie. Just then, Nagatoro wakes up and is impressed by what he's drawn. She decides to reward him and asks him to close his eyes, and the guy does as instructed. He then feels something soft against his lips and opens his eyes to see Nagatoro pushing a figurine into his mouth. Despite that teasing, Nagatoro is happy because she really likes the drawing he's made. The next day, they meet in the art room again, and Nagatoro starts teasing him as usual. However, Naoto stays silent and gives her the bombastic side eye, which makes her feel weird. Just then, Gamo and Yoshi swoop in and ask if he'd like to clap them instead, and the guy agrees, much to Nagatoro's shock. Turns out it was just a bad dream she was having while sleeping on the sofa. She notices a blanket on herself and realizes Naoto tucked her in out of care, making him fall for the guy ever so slightly. The next day, she shows up in the art room again and jokingly says that he would make a lot of noise if he's tickled because he's a loser virgin who has never been touched before. Naoto argues that he will sound normal and inadvertently invites Nagatoro to test that theory. She then runs after the guy and starts tickling him until he cannot take it anymore. Naoto gets frustrated and says everyone is ticklish. But Nagatoro says she neither has a gag reflex nor feels any tickles, not that he has the balls to find out for himself. Naoto once again says he has no problem tickling her, so Nagatoro takes off her shirt and tells him to do what he wants. He imagines her laughing when being tickled in the armpit and slowly goes in for it. However, Nagatoro fears he might actually make her lose aura and pulls away at the very last second. Later, she shows him a video of a sheep being sheared and starts acting like a girl because she finds its fluffy wool very cute. She then notices that Naoto's hair is also quite fluffy, and the guy admits he hasn't been to a barber in ages. Nagatoro reaches for her bag and pulls out an electric razor, sadistically explaining that she wants to shear Naoto's head. Naoto covers his head and cowers in the corner, so she resorts to scissors and a comb. The guy is still not so sure about it, but she says she is an expert because she cuts her brother's hair all the time. Eventually, the guy recalls his last visit to the barber and agrees to let her cut his hair. Before she gets started, she gets a call from a friend who asks her to come to the class to grab her notes. Nagatoro tells Naoto to stay put and rushes to the class, unaware they plan to get her away from Naoto. The two immediately rush to the art room and start smelling something fishy, eventually coming across the razor Nagatoro left behind. When Naoto tells them about the haircut, they imagine him looking like a low-res NPC and offer to shave his head. Meanwhile, Nagatoro finds the class empty and returns, only to hear Naoto begging for mercy. She immediately rushes in and stops them right before they cut his hair. She confronts them angrily, but not wanting anything to do with her, they quickly skedaddle out of there. Later, Nagatoro gives him a haircut which makes him look a little less hideous, but makes sure to remind him that he is still unpleasant to look at. The next day, they walk home and complain about the hot weather until Nagatoro suggests they get themselves some shaved ice from the place just around the corner. However, there is a huge line in front of the place because the shop was featured on TV just yesterday. Not wanting to wait for hours, Nagatoro grabs Naoto's hand and drags him away, claiming they don't need shaved ice anyway. Naoto suggests having ice cream from 7-Eleven, but his suggestion is so bad she instead chooses to wait in line. After a while, Naoto notes that some guys are laughing at her because they can see her strap, so he stands directly behind them to block their view. In the end, Nagatoro starts to feel dizzy but refuses to break the line, so Naoto drags her into a shade and gets her a refreshment drink. After regaining her strength, Nagatoro decides to come back for the shaved ice tomorrow when there are fewer people and asks him to stay put for a second. She then returns with cups of ice cream and the two eat it under the shade. As they walk home, they discuss how the summer break will start tomorrow and Nagatoro complains she will have to help up the entire time in the swim club. Naoto realizes she won't be here to mess with him during the break, but she asks if he would like to exchange contacts before they part ways. As he gives her his number, he tells her to keep her expectations low because he's a boring person, but Nagatoro says that's far from the truth. Time stops for the guy as he realizes that if his ugly face couldn't get him a shawty, his dull personality might. She then explains that she will know when he's having naughty thoughts about her and will send him stickers. As they part ways, Naoto is left with Nagatoro's drink and decides to drink from it for an indirect kiss. Just then, Nagatoro starts spamming him with stickers and he sees her standing just around the corner. Later, Naoto dreams of being summoned to a magical realm, Chichibu Nagatoro, and an angel tells him he has been chosen as the savior of this world. She tells him that there is a demon lord on the loose and they need his help, but Naoto argues he's built like a stick figure and can't do anything. The angel gets up close and sniffs him, revealing that he is blessed with magical powers, which means he is a great wizard. Just then, Naoto inadvertently summons his staff, and the angel pushes him off from the clouds so he can play the hero. Falling at max speed, the guy automatically slows down before impact and sees all kinds of magical beings around him. Just then, a giant lizard appears right next to him and is about to turn him into lunch, but a girl in cat costume appears and rescues him. She introduces himself as Nekotoro, but Naoto immediately realizes she's just Nagatoro in disguise. Nekotoro then says it's dangerous for him to stay alone and drags him away so they can go on an adventure to beat the Demon Lord. The two of them spend the next few days hunting and bonding over their experience until eventually, they fight a giant dragon who appears to be too much for them. Nekotoro gets carried away and almost gets toasted, but the guy luckily steps in the way and uses his staff to absorb the fire. With newfound motivation, the two of them work together to slay the dragon, and she kisses him as a reward for saving her life. Just then, a dragon turns into a freaky redhead Gamo, and Naoto figures the Demon Lord must have cursed her to become a dragon. He suggests the three of them join forces, but Gamo says they are actually 4 and points at an egg that hatches to reveal a girl named Yoshi. Later, the 4 of them arrive at the Demon Lord's castle, but Naoto finds it strange how the castle is completely empty. He wonders where the Demon Lord could be, only to learn that he has been betrayed but the 3 girls who were the actual demon all along. They corner the guy and threaten to finish him off, with Nekotoro going as far as to mock him for thinking he had a shot at clapping her. The others join to torment him, stating no girl would ever fall for him, and the guy starts crying after realizing he's a lonely virgin even in his dreams. He is woken up from the nightmare and finds out that he was dozing off in his favorite restaurant. Just then, Nagatoro and her friends show up at the cafe and Naoto decides to skedaddle before they start annoying him. However, the guy accidentally leaves his sketchbook behind, and Nagatoro sees Nekotoro's character in it, which looks exactly like her. She runs after him to ask if he drew a character after her, but Naoto keeps running, claiming the book isn't his. Eventually, she catches up to the guy but then decides to keep the book for herself since Naoto doesn't want to own it. Later, he enjoys himself under the AC and sees a TV show where girls are at a beach. Just then, he gets a call from Nagatoro, who says he's wasting his summer watching TV when he should be trying to score some chicks. She invites him to the beach along with her Gamo and Yoshi, who claim they would have never expected him to actually show up. They group up and start making fun of the guy by calling him a sea lice, making him regret the day even before it started. Nagatoro then says sea lice actually likes to hang out in groups, but Naoto is a loser who prefers being by himself. Once at the beach, Gamo changes into her swimsuit but notes that Naoto is eyeing her like a virgin, giving her a chance to tease him. When Naoto gets nervous, Yoshi runs in to shove her melons into his face as well, all while Nagatoro watches them in anger. The girls then ask him to fetch them some drinks, but Nagatoro changes into her swimsuit as well so he can stay focused on her alone. Later, they ask him to swim with them, but the guy puts out his drawing pad and starts drawing instead. As the girls engage in several minigames, Nagatoro notes that the guy is engrossed in his own world and decides to spend some time with him. She assumes the reason he's not getting to the water is because he can't swim, but Naoto reveals he's actually worried about the sunburn. She says she can take care of that problem and pulls out a sunscreen, but Naoto tries to run off to avoid her. As she stops him, she notes that he's wearing his swimsuit underneath and strips him for the occasion. He gets stressed imagining all sorts of scenarios where he gets bullied by the girls, but Nagatoro tells him to lie on his chest and promises to be gentle. However, the guy says that is something only couples do, and last he checked, they weren't dating. For some strange reason, Nagatoro gets aggressive and starts putting sunscreen on his back with her feet, stating that he deserves to be humiliated. Just then, Gamo and Yoshi show up as well and join her without her permission, much to her frustration. In the end, they use the whole bottle on Naoto and Nagatoro uses him to take a swim. Following that, they do all kinds of activities together and Naoto admires how they're all so full of energy even in the evening. At night, Nagatoro calls him to make sure he is okay, and the guy says his body is cramped up. She then asks if he had fun with them, and looking at the sketch of Nagatoro that he drew, he says it was all worth it in the end. Later, Naoto walks home after shopping and notices girls wearing yukata, which makes him realize that tonight is the night of the summer festival. He wants to invite Nagatoro but doesn't have the courage to, so he hopes she will force him to go with her anyway. At home, he plays video games to pass the time but keeps losing because he cannot get the festival out of his head. Eventually, the guy loses his patience and decides to go to the festival all by himself. Just then, Gammo and Yoshi spot him, and he immediately starts running for his life. Due to his better physique, the girls easily catch up to him and ask why he's in a public place when he usually prefers to be alone. The dude figures Naoto came here hoping he'd get some shotties on his joystick and inform him that he won't run into Nagatoro because she's stuck with her club activities. Naoto decides to go home and stay a virgin like you losers, but the girls have other plans and put him in a dog collar. Meanwhile, Nagatoro finally finishes her club work and learns that there is a festival going on. Her friend asks if she would go, and Nagatoro says yes while thinking about Naoto. Just then, she receives a text of Gamma holding Naoto as a prisoner and becomes furious. Within minutes, she speedruns to the festival just to see Naoto, but pretends that she was mean to come here anyway. After seeing the collar around his neck, Nagatoro asks Gammo to give her the leash, but Gammo proposes a challenge to see who gets to own Naoto as a pet. The two start by playing a shooting game, during which Nagatoro asks Naoto if he was waiting for her to invite him to the festival. Naoto obviously denies it, but Nagatoro gently tells him that he can always ask her out if he wants to go somewhere with her. They then engage in various games, and even though Gammo and Yoshi win, Nagatoro bribes them by sharing one of her prizes so she can have Naoto all to herself. The girls then leave the lovebirds alone, and it immediately gets awkward between the two. Eventually, Nagatoro goes back to her usual self and comments it's like they are on a date, which makes Naoto nervous. As usual, the guy starts making excuses to avoid the conversation, which amuses Nagatoro. She lightly says she would never date anyone who's packing less than 6 inches. But since they are on the topic, she allows Naoto to hold her hand. Just then, Naoto is distracted by the fireworks, so Nagoto drags him to a higher spot to see them. However, they get stuck in a large line until Naoto notices a side path that leads to the top of the hill. Just then, the line starts moving and Nagatoro is stuck in the crowd, so the guy instinctively rushes in and pulls her out. He then grabs her hand and walks her through the side passage. But Nagoto starts asking if he's brought her here to get his willy wet. Amid her teasing, they finally arrive at the spot that Naoto had found when he was a kid, allowing them to see fireworks alone. Nagatoro then teases him by asking if he has any other plans with her, but the guy says he really only brought her here to see the fireworks. As she keeps tormenting him, Naoto gets increasingly frustrated but realizes that she also gets shy despite acting so confident around him. Turning the tables around, Naoto starts teasing her back by asking her if she was expecting to get some backshots in the woods. Nagatoro is caught off guard by his boldness but keeps the act up until Naoto himself backs off. She starts joking about how people kiss under the fireworks, and when a heart-shaped firework goes off, they notice couples kissing around them, acting as if they've seen ghosts. Both of them run off into the woods and watch the fireworks from a different spot. Later, they walk home together and Naoto imagines how Nagatoro would look in a yukata. Heading to her earlier advice, Naoto sums up the courage and asks if he would like to come to the festival next year in a yukata. Nagatoro happily agrees, but only if Naoto wears one as well. He argues that guys don't wear them, but Nagatoro says they do, and that they should wear matching ones. Naoto starts imagining what they would look like, but then Nagoto says he's a smelly loser, and she would never match anything with him. On the first day of the next semester, Naoto walks back home, but notices Nagatoro and her friends sitting under a gazebo. They are joined by Sakura, and Naoto worries she will also join in to bully him. He imagines himself as a mole who dug underground but popped up in a cave of jaguars who are now out to get him. Soon after, the two guys accompanying Sakura join them and Nagatoro gets visibly annoyed. However, the guys are unfazed and keep talking normally, which makes Naoto wonder how these guys blend in so effortlessly. One of them starts hitting on Nagatoro and even places his hand around her, but Nagatoro pushes him away and rejects his advances. When the guy keeps pushing, Naoto gets furious and tries to play the hero but pisses his pants when he steps on a tree branch. He catches the attention of the whole group, so Gammo asks him to join them. Naoto nervously approaches the table and becomes a punching bag for the boys, but he sums up the courage to ask Nagatoro to walk home with him. Nagatoro happily agrees to come along with him, much to the shock of the boys. Gammo and Yoshi also leave the table, and Sakura also follows, leaving both guys behind. As they walk home, Sakura wonders if it is okay to leave them behind, but the girls collectively agree that they're annoying. They also praise Naoto for standing his ground, and Sakura remembers his face from when she saw him in the library. Nagatoro then tells the group that Naoto draws busty anime girls for Discord mods, and they start teasing him for being a nerd. Despite the teasing, they all share a delightful moment, and Naoto realizes he might just not die a virgin after all. The next day, Naoto wears a half-sleeved shirt and Nagatoro starts making fun of his skinny arms. Naoto starts feeling insecure about his lack of strength, so Nagatoro suggests strength training to make him feel better. She asks him to keep training, hoping he'd go from James Ellsworth to Brock Lesnar in the span of a few months. However, Naoto rejects the offer because building strength requires actual work, something he is never willing to do. He is willing to do an exercise that doesn't require moving, so Nagatoro tells him to get down on the ground. After he gets on his knees like your mom, Nagatoro sits on his back and asks him to hold this position. The guy tries his best, but starts getting bricked when he feels her buns pressing against his back. Eventually, he can't hold it any longer and begs her to get off, but Nagatoro turns him into her personal horse ride. She keeps telling him to push harder until a couple of girls walk by the art room and notice them being weird, which causes Naoto to fall in embarrassment. The next day, while Nagatoro is busy with her phone, Naoto appears quite sleepy because he stayed up playing video games. He's become such a sweaty gamer that he hasn't even studied for exams. Just then, Nagatoro tells him about the midterms that are in 4 days, and he hides the fact that he completely forgot about them. Nagatoro teases him by saying he must have been gooning all night to look so tired and scares him with the thought of failing the grade. However, Naoto realizes it might not be that bad after all because he will get to have one more year of being a virgin loser in the art room. Nagatoro tells him that he is not thinking this through because if he were to repeat grades, there is a high chance she will become his classmate. She then goes over all the new and fresh ways she can bully him as his classmate and gets moist over it. Surprisingly, Naoto doesn't mind the teasing and says his classes will be much less boring if she was around. This catches Nagatoro off guard, and she starts scolding him for making creepy comments. She says she wouldn't want to see his hideous face in class every day and pushes him to study so they don't end up as classmates. During lunch break, Naoto starts studying in the cafe, and the gang wastes no chance to make fun of him. Gammo jumps in the fun and says they will become Naoto's seniors if he fails twice in a row, which will give them infinite more ways to torment the poor soul. They imagine the guy working as their personal butler and enjoy every second of teasing him, which makes him annoyed. Just then, Sakura shows up and tells him not to worry because Gammo and Yoshi will be taking makeup exams and are more likely to repeat than him. A few days later, Nagatoro holds the test results and realizes Naoto really scored well in all subjects. Later, she passes by the art room and hears some sussy noises coming from the inside which make her moist. However, things get increasingly nasty from her perspective until she can't take it anymore and opens the door. As she looks at the girls in anger, they nervously explain that they are only trying to pull out a splinter in Naoto's thumb. Nagatoro cannot tolerate them cuddling up to the guy and decides to pull it out by herself. Later, the two walk home together and Nagatoro is upset because he allowed the girls to be all over him. She also spotted him helping Sakura carry chairs, which made her even more jealous. Naoto says he was only helping, so she suggests he helps her too by carrying her bag. She challenges him to a rock-paper-scissors match, and whoever loses has to carry the winner's bag until a certain point. By sheer luck, Naoto ends up beating her, so Nagatoro carries his back in anguish. She mocks him for letting a petite girl carry his weights, but Naoto reminds her that she brought it upon herself. At the next point, Nagatoro challenges him to another round, but the guy purposely loses to make her feel better. However, this ends up backfiring because Nagatoro keeps bothering him the entire way. For round 3, Naoto is frustrated and decides to drop the nice guy act, only to lose anyway. He asks her to give her back, but Nagatoro jumps on his back and tells him to carry her instead. Despite being annoyed, the guy complies with her wish and carries her until she starts slipping. Naoto tries to get a better grip but ends up grabbing her buns, prompting Nagatoro to push him and run in the opposite direction without saying a word. That night, Naoto worries he might have upset her and keeps checking his phone. Eventually, he gets messages from Nagatoro, who keeps teasing him as usual. She then asks him to guess what she is doing, and the guy says she's watching TV. However, Nagatoro calls him to let him know that she's currently in the bathtub and gets amused when he freaks out. She continues the torment by accusing him of imagining her in nasty ways. While Naoto is losing his mind, she accidentally turns the video on. Naoto takes the phone off his ear to catch his breath, but notices the video. When he tells Nagatoro about it, she starts boiling red and nearly explodes in the tub. Naoto apologizes and says she doesn't need to worry because he only saw her from the shoulders up, but Nagatoro says it is her own fault for getting carried away. The next day, Nagatoro practices shadowboxing in the art club room after getting obsessed with it. Excited, she asks Naoto to be her sparring partner, and the guy agrees knowing he's gonna get bullied anyway. During practice, Naoto can't keep his balance and stumbles onto her, which leads to an awkward hug. Despite being embarrassed, Nagatoro quickly brushes it off as an irregular clinch, but the moment still leaves her flustered. She immediately runs off to brag to her friends about what happened, and the girls start to think Naoto is making moves because he wants her to jump on his joystick. Yoshi says she wants to try clinching too, but Sakura that she prefers grappling instead. Gamo is amused and suggests they should all spar with Naoto. Naoto instinctively stops them but then possessively argues that they shouldn't punch people outside a proper ring. When Gamo points out that she has done exactly that, and when Nagatoro says she knows how to hold back, Gamo replies that she can hold back too. With all the girls fired up, they storm into the art club room, but Nagatoro orders Naoto to leave while she covers. She then challenges Gamo to a boxing match and Naoto already knows it was her own doing. The next day, Naoto walks into the art club room and is surprised to see Nagatoro, Yoshi, and Gamo hanging out without him. They thank him for letting them stay, explaining that their usual spot in the cafeteria has been overrun by a group of loud and annoying boys. Naoto is surprised they did not scare those guys off as they scare him every day, but they sadistically tell him that they have their own methods of dealing with such people. Turns out they have sent Sakura to put her melons to good use so she can stir up jealousy among the boys and break up their friend group. The girls complain about how men are ruled by their hunger for kitties, and their manipulative actions leave Naoto terrified. Gamo then teases Nagatoro, claiming that Naoto probably has no such desires at all. To prove otherwise, Nagatoro teases Naoto into reacting to a pretend kiss, but Gamo claims that's just his V-card security system detecting a threat. Not backing down, Nagatoro declares that Naoto is secretly a Rizzler and proposes a bet. If she can find a hidden sussy book in the club room, it will prove that he goons to busty anime girls before bed. Nagatoro eagerly begins searching, turning the room upside down, while Naoto desperately insists that he has nothing to hide. Yoshi and Gamo seem to believe him, but Nagatoro is convinced that his panic means he is close to being exposed. Unbeknownst to the girls, Naoto does, in fact, have a sussy manga hidden in the prep room which he only reads for the plot. Feeling bad about Nagatoro possibly losing the bet on his behalf, he discreetly retrieves the manga and places it somewhere easy for her to find. When she finally discovers it, she is ecstatic and begins teasing him relentlessly, while her friends watch in confusion. The following day, when Nagatoro enters the art club room, Naoto immediately notices she is wearing a new earring and compliments her on it. Pleased, she explains that she has always had a hole in her right earlobe, but since she rarely wears earrings, it had closed up, so she had to pierce it again. Naoto winces at the thought of it being painful, but Nagatoro waves it off, saying it is just a tiny poke. She then offers to pierce his ear too, just for fun, but Naoto nervously declines, saying he would look weird with an earring. Nagatoro teases that if he is too embarrassed, he can just wear it in the art club room, or better yet, they can get matching earrings. Despite being intrigued, Naoto tries to refuse, but when she asks if he is scared, he stubbornly denies it. Taking the opportunity, Nagatoro leans in and pretends to pierce his ear. Expecting pain, Naoto braces himself, only to realize that he barely feels anything. Checking his ear, he finds no hole at all, and Nagatoro admits that she has just lightly poked him. She then playfully asks if he is disappointed that she didn't make a hole in his body, but Naoto quickly assures her he isn't. Just then, Sakura bursts into the room, visibly shaken and on the verge of tears. Without warning, she clings to Naoto and begs for help. Later, at a cafe, she explains to the group that she has been stalked for days by one of the boys from the cafeteria. To escape the situation, she asks Naoto to pretend to be her boyfriend, believing that if the stalker sees her being affectionate with another guy, he will back off. Everyone seems to think it is a good plan except for Nagatoro, who is clearly jealous. She tries to convince Sakura to pick someone else, even going so far as to call Naoto a smelly Discord mod, but her protests only convince Naoto to go along with the fake date. The next day, Naoto and Sakura go on their staged date while Nagatoro, Gamo, and Yoshi follow them in secret, recording everything with their phones. Gamma teases Nagatoro, comparing the situation to an anime plot where a fake date turns into real feelings, which only frustrates Nagatoro further. Just before the fake couple can get too close, Nagatoro decides to take matters into her own hands. She tracks down the stalker, confronts him directly, and forces him to promise never to bother Sakura again. With the problem resolved, she turns her attention back to Naoto, mocking him for ruining his first date. She even tells him he doesn't have enough reas to bag chicks anyways, and instead of getting flustered, Naoto simply smiles and agrees, leaving Nagatoro slightly taken aback. The next day, Nagatoro playfully asks Naoto if he wants to see some hot snaps and describes them as cool and all natural. Naoto immediately imagines she's opened an OnlyFans account, but Nagatoro quickly reveals she is actually talking about snapping hot chicken. Later, Nagatoro and her friends watch from their classroom window as the second-year students run a marathon. They quickly spot Naoto struggling at the very back and are amazed at how poorly he is doing. As he walks home, Nagatoro approaches him and teases him by saying that she is embarrassed to have him as her senpai. When Naoto replies that the only thing he is good at is drawing, she is visibly annoyed. His lack of confidence frustrates her so much that she decides to train him personally. The next day, despite it being the weekend, Nagatoro drags Naoto out for marathon training. She arrives wearing a ponytail along with a tight, skimpy outfit that causes him to cream. As they begin, Naoto can't help but stare at her amazing jiggle physics as she runs ahead of him. Embarrassed, he forces himself to pick up the pace so he won't get accused of being a thirst king. However, after running halfway through the route, he collapses and begs Nagatoro to stop. Nagatoro provokes him by calling him a wimp, slapping her own cakes, daring him to catch her if he is mad. Fueled by frustration, Naoto pushes himself to keep going, making Nagatoro smile as she encourages him to do his best. After completing the 5-kilometer route, Nagatoro makes Naoto do some stretches. She quickly notices how stiff he is and suggests he try a forward bend. While she is demonstrating her moves, she unintentionally puts her Cave of Wonders on display, which makes him nervous. As Naoto's body shakes from the effort, Nagatoro helps him stretch in pairs until he gradually becomes more flexible. Just as they finish their last stretch, Yoshi happens to walk by with her dog. Seeing their awkward position, she jokingly asks if they are attempting a fusion, leaving them both embarrassed. As the culture festival approaches, Naoto struggles to find someone to model for his art. While he is lost in thought, Nagatoro overhears him mumbling to himself and makes him explain his dilemma. She eagerly offers to help, but Naoto hesitates because drawing a female figure is too difficult for him. When Nagatoro reminds him that he drew Nekotoro earlier, Naoto makes a counteroffer that he will only use her as a model if she wears her Nekotoro costume. Turns out it is his plan to get rid of her because he is certain she won't be able to find one or will be too embarrassed to wear it. However, the following week, an utterly embarrassed Nagatoro enters the art club room wearing a perfectly crafted Nekotoro outfit that she has specially ordered from the handicrafts club. She demands that Naoto say something, only to get mad when he merely compliments the craftsmanship of the costume instead of commenting on how she looks in it. Meanwhile, Gamma, Yoshi, and Sakura peek through the door before barging in. They join Nagatoro in teasing Naoto while she poses for his drawing, challenging him to make her look busty and laughing at his embarrassment. As they continue chatting, the girls discuss their plans for the culture festival and ask Naoto what he wants to do this year. This takes Naoto back to last year when the club's president, despite being very strict, managed to hold a successful art display. In the end, she asked Naoto to take care of the club because she couldn't come anymore, leaving the guy with a huge responsibility on his shoulders. When Naoto mentions that he will likely organize an art display just like the previous year, the girls immediately call it boring and insist on helping him make it more exciting. Nagatoro jokingly suggests turning it into a torture game for Naoto or a catgirl-themed maid cafe, while Sakura proposes a cross-dressing cafe where Naoto would dress as a maid. Amused by the idea but unwilling to see him attract too much attention, Nagatoro firmly rejects it. Just then, Naoto hears approaching footsteps and immediately asks the girls to hide in the prep room. Moments later, the art club president enters with a serious expression and asks Naoto what he wants to do this year. Hidden inside the prep room, Sakura, Yoshi, and Gamma eavesdrop, teasing Nagatoro by suggesting that the beautiful president might be Naoto's ex-girlfriend. He nervously says he will hold an exhibit, so she announces that she will be contributing one of her paintings to the club's display. Seeing snacks on the table, she confronts Naoto about rumors she has heard that the club room has turned into a hangout spot for troublemakers. The president scolds Naoto for inviting people into the club and being disruptive, reminding him that the art club is supposed to be a serious space. Listening to the conversation, the girls feel a bit guilty, though they don't say anything out loud. When the president notices Naoto's painting of Nagatoro in her Nekotoro outfit, she criticizes it, stating that the club is for art, not manga sketches. She reveals she has spoken to the student council and is considering disbanding the club. Naoto is caught off guard because this is practically his whole life and struggles to respond. Before he can say anything, Nagatoro and her friends burst out of the prep room. Nagatoro immediately confronts the president, accusing her of being selfish for abandoning the club and then suddenly returning just to shut it down. The president dismisses her argument, stating that if Naoto is the only remaining member and lacks motivation, then there is no reason for the club to continue. This enrages Nagatoro, who snaps and passionately defends Naoto, making it clear how much she believes in him and his hard work. The president is slightly taken aback and proposes a solution, which involves Naoto holding his own independent art display. If his exhibit manages to outperform hers in the school's popularity contest, she will withdraw her decision to disband the club. Though Naoto hesitates because he is unsure of himself, Nagatoro immediately accepts the challenge on his behalf, promising to help him for the survival of their club. After the president leaves, Nagatoro starts mocking her with an exaggerated impression while Gamo, Yoshi, and Sakura burst into laughter. However, Naoto tells them to stop, which surprises Nagatoro. Sakura and Gamo tease him, suggesting he is defending her because he secretly wants her to let him in. Naoto quickly dismisses the claim, insisting they are the ones at fault and that they stand no chance against her. To cheer him up, the four girls eagerly offer their help, suggesting they turn his display into a kitty cosplay art cafe. Naoto informs them that the previous year, the art club's display ranked 6th in the popularity contest out of more than 50 exhibits, and that the club has won numerous awards over the years, including first place in a competition featuring university students. Hearing this, all four girls immediately suspect that Naoto wants to clap the president, much to Nagatoro's visible dismay. Curious, Gamo asks how a painting could rank so highly in a popularity contest. In response, Naoto shows them the painting that gains such attention, which is actually a self-portrait of the president with her rice cakes on display. The girls are shocked but quickly realize how it managed to place so high, and Nagatoro is especially frustrated because she thinks Naoto goons to this picture at night. When she demands Naoto's opinion, he calls the portrait amazing and starts describing its qualities, which pisses her off even more. Gamo then tells Naoto that all he has to do is paint something equally incredible, so Nagatoro offers to model for him in a swimsuit if he begs her. However, Naoto remains unconvinced, doubting that Nagatoro's B cups could match the president's D cup talents. Gamo also mocks Nagatoro for being as flat as Sakura and explains that models with bigger melons tend to attract larger crowds. She further tells Nagatoro that while being a little cute is fine, it pales in comparison to a body like the president's. As they keep yapping about the sheer size of the president's chug jugs, Naoto intervenes and says that both Nagatoro and the president are charming in their own ways. His words instantly brighten Nagatoro's mood, prompting the girls to begrudgingly apologize. Feeling encouraged, Nagatoro asks Naoto how he would prefer to paint her and shows her cosplay costumes, but Naoto remains discouraged. As they walk home together, he tries sketching her, but Nagatoro notices that the sketch looks bland and tells him to try harder. She then suggests doing something bolder, but Naoto argues that a slice-of-life theme would be better suited. Determined to help him win, Nagatoro confidently declares that she will give him both moral and oral support. The next day, Nagatoro shows up in a swimsuit to model for him, but when the guy struggles, Nagatoro starts removing more and more layers of clothing, eventually leaving herself in nothing but a towel. Just as Naoto processes the situation, Gamo enters the room with Sakura and Yoshi, immediately groping Nagatoro's milk packs while the others tease her about how good she looks. Suddenly, Naoto states that he no longer wants to use Nagatoro as his model, explaining that if he drags her into this contest and loses, it would be embarrassing for her. Offended, Nagatoro storms out of the room, followed closely by the rest of her friends. Later that day, Naoto returns to the art club room to work on his painting, only to find that the president has taken over the space to work on hers, leaving him with the prep room. As he works on an art piece, the president approaches him in nothing but a towel, since she is preparing another self-portrait. She criticizes his work by calling it boring and claims that true art must be filled with love. At that moment, Nagatoro enters the room to check on Naoto, only to freeze in shock at the sight of the president standing beside him with her giant melons out. Overcome with sadness, she turns and runs away, but the president tells Naoto to chase after her. Without hesitation, Naoto sprints after Nagatoro but struggles to find the right words. He remains silent for too long, allowing a pair of her classmates to approach. Seizing the opportunity, Nagatoro tells them that Naoto is a stalker before running away again. Naoto chases her a second time while memories of all their shared moments and her willingness to model for him flash through his mind. When they reach the school's swimming pool, Nagatoro jumps onto the edge, refusing to listen to him. Desperate, Naoto shouts from below and begs her to be his model. Blushing but still mad, Nagatoro retorts that he should ask the president instead since he seems to prefer her. She becomes so distracted by her own frustration that she loses her balance, but before she can fall, Naoto grabs her just in time. Holding her close, he firmly states that he does not want to draw the president, instead he wants to draw her. Pleased yet determined to maintain her tough exterior, Nagatoro demands to know why. After hesitating for a moment, Naoto finally admits that she is the most stimulating person for him. Overcome with emotion, both of them lose balance and fall into the swimming pool together. Later, as they sit on the poolside drying off, Naoto notices that Nagatoro's wet uniform has become transparent. Realizing where his eyes are wandering, Nagatoro immediately splashes him with water, laughing at his flustered reaction. As they walk home together, Nagatoro suggests that a cosplay display might be better than a simple painting. Naoto, still embarrassed from earlier, absent-mindedly responds that it would better show how cute she is. The moment the words leave his mouth, he turns bright red much like Nagatoro. Desperate to break the tension, she immediately starts teasing him over his choice of words. Meanwhile, the president meets with the head of the school's Public Morals Committee. The committee chief explains that the final decision regarding the art club will ultimately depend on what she deems appropriate on the actual day of the festival. After Naoto showcases his paintings of Nagatoro's everyday moments to Yoshi, Sakura, and Gamo, they are thoroughly impressed. Gamo teasingly suggests that Naoto must see Nagatoro as his lover, leaving both of them flustered. She then proposes sneaking a peek at the president's artwork, and despite Naoto's protests, the girls eagerly agree. Upon their return, they are left utterly shocked, with Nagatoro fainting on the spot. Seeing this reaction, Gamo and Sakura conclude that they need to outmaneuver the president's bold display and begin scheming. Naoto insists that it's a matter between him and Nagatoro, but the guy is talking to a wall because the girls toss him out and assure him they will prepare her for the challenge ahead. Later, while helping decorate the cultural festival entrance alongside the president, Naoto discusses their art submissions. She warns him that she won't hold back and urges him to deliver a piece that's filled with passion. As they chat, Naoto notices a strap on her bag and asks about it. The president nonchalantly reveals that it's a trendy item in her class and that someone gave her an extra one. To his surprise, the strap is a caricature of Nagatoro in cat costume, leaving him wondering about what the girls are plotting. At the start of the festival, the president confidently handles an interview with the school journalist, whereas Naoto stammers awkwardly like a beta male. Before the interview ends, Gamo makes a grand entrance and introduces Nagatoro dressed in a cat costume. She quickly steals the spotlight as she, Yoshi, and Sakura perform a choreographed mascot dance which they uploaded to YouTube. The video went viral, drawing a massive crowd eager to be bullied by Nagatoro. Amid the excitement, a boy praises Naoto's artwork and asks Nagatoro out, making Naoto visibly jealous. Although she seems indifferent at first, Nagatoro playfully taunts the boy the same way she teases Naoto, attracting even more attention. Meanwhile, visitors also flock to the president's new self-portrait as expected. However, to Naoto's surprise, his exhibition gains just as much interest thanks to Nagatoro. While he appreciates the girl's efforts, he can't help but feel jealous of the attention Nagatoro receives. On the other hand, she secretly fumes as well when a pair of girls admire Naoto's artistic talent. Sensing the tension, Gamo suggests that Naoto and Nagatoro take a break to get some food together. Nagatoro hesitates at first, but Gamo reassures her that Yoshi and Sakura can manage the exhibition. Suddenly, Sakura shows up out of costume, so Gamo and Yoshi quickly open the mascot costume she had been wearing. To their horror, they discover that she swapped places with her former stalker just to sneak off for ice cream. Enraged, Gamo and Yoshi immediately pummel the stalker while he remains stuck in the suit. As they walk together, Nagatoro nonchalantly asks Naoto if he enjoyed all the attention from the girls, but her true irritation soon surfaces. To cheer her up, Naoto tells her that the compliments were only because she was his model. Her irritation fades into a flustered blush, and she softens but still tries to keep up her act. They then share a meal together before returning to the exhibition, only to find that the Public Morals Committee chief has shut down the president's display. The student council had granted permission only on the condition that the painting passed inspection, and it has now been ruled as a walking thirst trap. The president is escorted to the disciplinary room, prompting Naoto, Nagatoro, and even Yoshi to step in and defend her artwork. After an intense debate, they manage to convince the committee chief to allow the exhibition to continue after showing him a picture that showcases how many people saw the president's painting as a piece of art. Although she is grateful, the girls decide to exact some revenge for the trouble the president caused by forcing her to wear a revealing bunny suit while selling their straps around the school. As the festival nears its end, Nagatoro tells her friends she wants to take a walk, though they all know she is looking for Naoto. Later, the president approaches Naoto at his exhibition, still wearing the bunny suit. He panics and suggests that she should change before she gets into more trouble. Taking his words too literally, she begins to strip on the spot, but Nagatoro bursts in just in time to stop her. The president says she was joking, but Nagatoro is clearly skeptical. Later, she looks at Naoto's paintings and remarks that while the technique may still be developing, she can see the passion in them. More importantly, she notes that there is love in them, making both Naoto and Nagatoro blush. Just then, an announcement rings out, signaling that the live concert will start at 4 p.m. Seizing the moment, Naoto asks Nagatoro if she wants to go with him. She eagerly accepts, and Gamo, Yoshi, and Sakura burst in to join them. The group heads toward the auditorium, with Nagatoro playfully pulling Naoto along by his arm with a smile. Later, Naoto sketches a drowsy Nagatoro who wakes up midway and smiles at him. When she looks at the drawing, she playfully tells him to close his eyes and prepare for his reward. Naoto nervously complies and waits for her to pull another prank. However, Nagatoro gently kisses him on the cheek before skipping away, leaving the guy in shock. That's it for this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications to see more recaps like this. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.